I would tell them to check your speed, check your weight, and to check your direction,
Mm.
right? If you are noticing that you're not hitting the mark that you want, if you're not reaching the audiences that you want, there's going to be a connection to one of these lanes.
If you are a female Christian entrepreneur or life coach, you need a podcast. And if you have a podcast, you need a podcast coach. Finding a supportive and empowering community is key to podcaster success. Through my holistic approach as a trained life coach and my experience in the podcast industry since 2016, I want to encourage you weekly through answering your podcasting questions. I'm cheering for you, and your voice matters. Hey friends, welcome to Holistic Podcasting. I am your podcast coach, Kristin Chadwick. Today, I have a very special guest, Danielle Owens. She is going to rock your world and share with us the 3 things that you need to maintain podcast momentum. Danielle is an ICF trained mindset coach and the founder of the Fruitful Mind Company. You guys, she has coached many leaders from all over the world. She's been an assistant principal, and today she is teaching us through an amazing metaphor how to continue this podcast momentum. I know some of us in December, we kind of slow down and start to reflect so that we can move forward. And this podcast is going to be perfect for you as you start to think about January 2024. Now, some of you, I want to remind you, in January, we are launching our podcast bootcamp of 2024. In January, you will have the first week of January, the last week of December to sign up, and I don't want you to miss it. I know that there were many of you that I have spoken to, I have connected with, that podcasting is on your radar, and I don't want you to miss this opportunity. So make sure that you are connected with me via email so that you can be on our newsletter to hear when the cart opens to register, or you can register now with me. And I want you in that podcast bootcamp. If you have a dream of starting a podcast, or you've had a dream for many years, I'm telling you, now is the time to say yes to that dream. For all you other podcasters that are listening, that you have started a podcast in 2023 or before, you need to hear today's episode. You're going to take away valuable questions you can ask yourself, techniques that we can check in with ourselves, and direction on how to move and continue to stay on this podcast momentum. All right, without further ado, here is the lovely Danielle Owens. All right, so Danielle, what do you think those 3 things that we need to maintain podcast momentum?
Yeah, I believe that the 3 things that we need are speed, weight, and direction. And I like to describe it as like a semi truck, right? So if you're a flatbed and you have nothing on your trailer, then what are you really delivering? And that thing that we don't have on our trailer would be our weight. So our skills, our knowledge. Sometimes we're feeling really inspired to begin a podcast or begin something new, but we need to take some conscious time to think about, what is it that I'm carrying? What is the wisdom that I have to share? What are my key learnings and skills? Or we could need speed. And speed is that action, that motivation, that drive or passion to do something. And likely, if you're an entrepreneur or you're a podcaster, you have that, you know what you want to talk about. So that's the speed that we have. And that's a great motivator for us. And direction would be exactly where we're going, what our plans are for this quarter or for this season for our podcast, and where are we hoping to go. And we have to make sure that that is really, really clear. This is a metaphor, but I'm a little nerd, so I like to nerd out with a little brain science. I have always loved science, and when I read scripture or when I see science, I see more of God and who he truly is. And he gave us a beautiful tool of our minds. So knowing exactly how our minds work and what motivates us just cognitively really helps us be able to execute what we are supposed to, that God-given dominion, naturally. And so I use the metaphor of speed, weight, and momentum, but those are things that are actually going on in our minds, right? So we need that drive from our amygdala. It's like it's kind of like a walnut. It's back in our brains, and I'm sure that everybody's heard of it. We have a lot of talk about amygdala hijack, and that is where our emotions are driven. So that is passionate. And though that amygdala is like a little part in the back of our minds, it lights up. It's very bright. That is where our passion comes from. And the interesting thing about our amygdala is that it may light up, but it can block our critical thinking or our direction, our ability to set direction for ourselves.
Wow.
If it gets so bright that it blocks us, then we can feel passionate. And that's where a lot of the overwhelm that entrepreneurs have. They have great ideas, they feel sparked, they really are passionate about things, but they don't exactly know where to go. So, knowing the metaphor of that semi truck and knowing speed, weight, and direction really does give us a better understanding so that we can check in with ourselves so we know what might be missing. And in our minds, that weight is also in our prefrontal cortex or like our executive functioning part of our brain. And that weight is our ability to develop skills. And I read a really funny quote not too long ago about the way that learners love to procrastinate. Learners love to procrastinate by picking up a new skill or finding a new thing to read, right? So we love to bask in knowledge, right? I could read the next book.
Uh-huh.
And personally, that's my favorite way to procrastinate. I don't know about y'all, but
Yeah. I need that
so
next course. Yep. Mhm.
absolutely. So if I find myself in that space, I have to do my check-in like, uh-oh, I know this metaphor. Okay, do I have the speed? I got my passion. I'm feeling hot about this, obviously, because I picked up this new skill, this new book. But is this allowing me to get to where I want to go? Is this providing me the direction that I want to?
Mm.
So, knowing these three tools that exist in our mind really help us be clear about what we need to do next.
That's so good. Oh, man. Okay, so you hit drive, that's our amygdala. Weight is our frontal cortex. And
Mhm.
direction, where does the direction, like, knowing where we're going
Yeah,
to?
that's our prefrontal as well. So our prefrontal cortex, that part of our mind that God gave us, it allows us to plan and to set vision, right?
Okay.
So without vision, you don't have a plan, and without a plan, there's no vision. They go hand in hand. So that all comes from the very front of our mind.
Okay. Okay, this totally makes sense, and as I was explaining to you, I had just gotten off of our last podcast boot camp class, and one of the things that we talk about in that program is an action step plan. Like, you can have that message, you can have that passion, you can have the drive, but until you know the direction that you're actually going with and a plan to go there, it's gonna be a lot of, mm, I would say, like, energy dependent. Like, you can go for a little while. Do you find that? Like, when you only have 1 or 2 of these 3 things to maintain this momentum, that you lose something along the way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love the metaphor of like a balloon. So imagine you have a big balloon, right? And you blow up hot air in that balloon, but you don't tie it.
Mm,
If you just let it go, it's gonna go real quick, but
yes.
real quick nowhere, right? So as a podcaster, one of the things like you'll need that content focus. Absolutely, you need that focus. You also need a plan of consistency, as you were saying, like you need the plan of execution. And one thing that we forget that we need as well, that is a part of our direction, is alignment to your brand.
Mm.
How is it connecting to the mission that you set out to have, right? You have dominion, right? You have an area that you're supposed to be having command over. And is your material in alignment with that? And we know that once we don't have alignment with the material that we're making, that we actually start to lose viewership and we start to lose engagement from others because it's no longer a part of our like authentic dominion that we're supposed to carry. So checking in with yourself to make sure that is this the direction that I am supposed to go in? Is this my direction based upon what God is telling me right now?
Oh, wow. I feel like my brain is exploding because I feel like that's like the heart of my style of coaching is that alignment has to be there. And I love that you said that because I think, hearing it from somebody else of like, how is this lining up with the rest of what you're doing, your coaching business, your service providing, all of those things, it's got to align. Otherwise, it's going to be that balloon that dissipates really quick, or it's going to be you guys are on two separate tracks, or you're feeling inauthentic and the people are sensing it as they're listening. Oh, that is so, so good. I appreciate the metaphors because that's where my brain connects for sure.
Yeah, well, our mind likes pictures. It does, it really does. So, like, what we're just discussing is a problem with speed, right? We have a lot of that speed and we really wanna go somewhere, but it's also attached to kind of like some shiny object syndrome. Um,
Yeah.
and we all can be a victim of it because we see, "Oh, this person is doing this," or, "Oh, I read this and this makes me really excited." But it may not be what we really should be focusing our energy on. I just I you can notice that within your body as well because of how you might get heightened or overwhelmed. If you're more kinesthetic, you might use your hands a lot, right? Or you might feel like you want to take notes, but then you want to read something, but then you want to type something. So in that planning process, you might want to do a self check, like, where am I feeling this in my body? Because it might be an indication that you're having an overload of speed.
Oh,
Um, yeah.
okay. Can you unpack that? Like, so say somebody's like, I feel it in my chest. Like, what would that look like as they unpack that?
Yeah, so to unpack that would be, okay, my heart may be pumping, or I may start to get like feel like I need to stretch. That's your
Mhm.
body's natural signal. We are wonderfully and fearfully made. Like,
Yeah.
God gave us all of those signals to identify if we need to reset or we need to check in. So you may feel that in your body. And if you do, as you're stretching, what I would love for people to think is, where's this coming from? Like, allow it to come out. Allow
Mm.
yourself to stretch if you feel that in your chest, or you may feel that risen in your shoulders. So doing those self checks as you're doing your work, and then do your check throughout the each of the levels. So you may feel that in your body, and then, okay, is this connected to speed? I'm going fast? Am I going fast? All right, if I'm going fast, am I going fast in the right direction?
Mm.
Mm. Or do I feel like maybe I'm losing some of my focus because I learned something great and new, and I really don't know how to apply this yet? So, it may be a weight issue. So, using these metaphors to check in with yourself as you're feeling it maybe in your body. You may feel it externally with a partner.
Yeah.
I'm moving currently, so I found myself having a speed signal when I was in the aisles of Home Goods. We all love a good Home Goods,
Yep.
right? So I have a pillow, and my partner has a pillow at the other end, and we're like, do these match? And I had to just take a second and say, like, hey girl, you're going fast. Slow down. What's the direction? Is this actually aligned to the things that you have in your house? But that was also during a week where I was doing a lot of new stuff and learning a lot of new content that I was going to apply. And I had a meeting with my content coach in a few hours. So I had to really identify where all of these signals were coming from and how they were spilling out in other areas of my life, whether physically or externally in relation with someone else.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so number 1, I love that you have such a holistic picture of these 3 things. And so if we feel it physically, how does it play out spiritually in us?
Mm. Mm. It may play out spiritually in like distraction during your quiet time,
Mm.
or you may find yourself praying and then reciting something that you thought that you were going to write down, right? I don't know. That does happen to me as well. And then I have to tell myself, like, hey, God, okay, I'm excited about this. So not giving not shaming yourself for it. Like, he is thankfully a Lord of grace, right? He is gracious with us. But though he is gracious, we also need to do that with ourselves. So we just need to lean on him when we're noticing that as well. Like, yes, identify it, but do not remove your ability to be gracious with yourself as you're processing through that.
That's so good. Okay. So if somebody is listening to this and we're going into the holidays as this comes out and they're feeling, oh man, I feel the momentum is slow, but I really want to prepare for January. How would you help them and coach them through that process?
Yeah. So we can find ourselves in different scenarios. And so what you just described was like low speed, low weight, but you might be going in the right direction,
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
So you may be very deliberate in exactly where you want to go. And you may know that your podcast aligns with the direction that you want to go, but you may have a small listener base, or you may not be as consistent
Mm,
with what you're putting out. So that means you might need to have a spike in creativity. My suggestion for you would be to try something new, not a hobby, but to try something new. Go eat a new food, go watch a new show, go travel to a new place, drive and go see something that you haven't seen in your area, in your town, in your city. Why? That sparks our creativity, and sometimes we need a spike of dopamine and motivation to make sure that we can pick up the speed a little bit. So if we need to pick up the speed, we need to pick up the weight. If you need That's picking up the speed, that creativity boost. If you need to pick up the weight, what accountability partner can you get? What new skill can you develop to also give yourself that spike of dopamine in your body that you need to be a little bit more motivated to pick up the speed and the weight of your podcast? We know that you're going in the right direction, but let's add some stuff.
yeah, that's a good distinction between weight and speed. And I can totally relate to the lack of creativity and then finding something different or new. And either right before this podcast or the next podcast, we're going to be talking about the benefits of downtime,
Mhm.
which is phenomenal. So either listen to that before or after this because that will help you too in your creativity. But I love the idea of finding something new. I know for me, when I get into that space, I have to remind myself or that I really enjoy listening to music that is different or a podcast that is different. But even just like going physically to a new place is going to strike that creativity. And almost without fail, those new ideas start to come in. And I love that. I love that so much. Yes. So good. Yeah, keep going, keep going.
Yeah. Okay. So that is one. You might have low speed, low weight, and the right direction. We may also find ourselves with high speed, low weight, and the wrong direction. So you may find yourself in a place where you're rapidly producing your podcast and your episodes, but you may not be considering their significance or alignment to your target audience, right? And so in that moment, you need to check, what am I doing and why am I doing this for?
Mhm.
Where am I now? That's the question that you can ask yourself.
Oh, that's good.
Where am I now? And how did I get here? Though that may bring about some emotions of like, oh man, I'm off track. But just as we were saying earlier, remember your grace.
Mm.
So, first, remember your grace. And then, secondly, celebrate your speed. You did have great speed. Some of us have a hard time staying motivated. That's a beautiful thing that you have that motivation within you and you know you're really passionate about what you're doing. That's amazing. So, we celebrate that and then we identify how we can also go where we really need to be. So, if you're a journaler, go back to those old journaling notes that you had
Mhm.
and read some of them. If you've done podcasts in the past, go back and listen to your old stuff, right? We want to make sure that we're still going in the right direction. So when we notice that we're high speed, but in the wrong direction, or we have low weight, then we need to do our self check. Where am I now? How did I get here? Celebrate where you are, and then identify what needs to change.
Mhm. Yeah. And I feel like too, there's like a grace, like you're saying, there's a grace in we can shift too. So there's many, many podcasters who start with one message and then they realize over, 100 episodes, they're like, actually, I think my message is more this area. So how does that play out with this metaphor?
Yeah. So if you notice that it is time for your shift, that is great. That means that you have a habit of reflection. You want to continue that. We also want to make sure that we're checking in with ourselves to identify, is this a pattern? Do I continually have this shift where I get off course? And if that is a pattern that you've noticed, then we need to refine our direction.
Mm,
Is this still the direction that I know that I'm supposed to go in? What tells me that? If we know that it's not, what is the direction that I'm supposed to go in now? And then we always need accountability. So I encourage you to check in with someone and talk through that direction that you feel like you need to go in with a fellow podcaster or your podcast coach or Kristen or or a partner, right? Those are
yeah.
the people that you want to check in with so that you can refine and reframe your direction.
So good. So good. Okay. Tell us more. Like,
So we just talked about, yeah, no problem. We just talked about high speed, low weight, wrong direction. We can talk about high weight, low speed, right direction. So you're prioritizing the significance and you're aligned with everything, but we also need to make sure that we're going the right speed. I actually think that we talked about that. Excuse me, apologies. So yeah, you may be, which is where we all want to be, high speed, high weight, and right direction, right? So you know exactly what you want to do. You know exactly where you want to go. You've checked in and you have the skills and the capacity to continue to do that. And then the right direction. You know exactly where your space is, where your lane is in the podcast world, and your viewership is responding to that. That's wonderful, but how do you maintain and sustain that? What are the things that we really need to do to make sure that, okay, we're staying on this track? First, before we start anything new, we have to understand the price of that thing,
mm,
right? That is going to take more of our time. That is going to take more of our energy and our productivity, right? And really building in a habit of reflection to do that purpose check. Yes, I'm hitting all of my markers and here I am. Here I am now and celebrate that. We know that we have to continue to be motivated, and to continue to be motivated, we need to know what our reward is in life, right? And by stopping to reflect, when we can stop and reflect, we can then check in and really know, oh, like this is how I've gotten here. And this is what it feels like. You need to bask in that space a little bit,
mm.
right? What things brought you here? What things got you here? So I really, really encourage everyone to build a habit of reflection so that they know how they got where they are. Because sometimes what we can find is we get to a place and it feels like a miracle.
Oh,
Right? We got there and we don't necessarily know the systems or the mindsets that we needed to sustain that place. And that can really build in some imposter syndrome with us, right? If we're not able to sit down and really reflect on, hey, I can celebrate myself for this accomplishment. And these are the things that I've built in to sustain this space, then it's going to be hard to keep that up in the long run because you're not aware of how you got to where you are.
so good. So good. Yeah, reflection. I have a reflection and gratitude journal specifically for podcasters because of this very thing. Because, man, we really don't take the time to just sit and pause and think about, wow, I in specifically this year, 2023, how did I get here? November. You may be a new podcaster and you are 40 episodes in. Congratulations. That's huge. How did you get here? I love that, just tangible example of how do we reflect well and understanding what it took to get there. And of course, that's going to help you understand the price of the next decision in your momentum. So good.
I think that it's wonderful that you have that gratitude journal because gratitude is really a part is really a part of this, right? We have to be grateful for the people who have helped us, the people who have given us space and time, and just for ourselves, right? Like what dedication and what perspectives did I have to have? What mindsets did I need to have? What did I have to tell myself to actually get here? That is such a great practice that everyone really should have. And I know that it's sometimes harder for some of us, especially some of us type A people who just know that we're supposed to go, and so we just keep going. That's not sustainable. We are built in a certain way, and that way is not to continue going forever. We do need breaks. We do need rest. We do need downtime, as you were saying. So I also encourage people to do value checks. And what that value check means is that how am I ensuring that I'm adding value to myself? Because some of us have such a big servant's heart and we want to continue to add value to the people that we serve, our listeners, and the people that we coach. But we're not really checking out how we're evaluating and value ourselves. The scripture of like love thy neighbor as thyself, we first got to have that love for ourselves to really continue doing the loving of others well. So what value are you giving yourself? Not just personal development and not just self-care, but sometimes the way that we speak to ourselves and the way that we celebrate ourselves in those moments really allows us to understand the weight of our value and why we have this gift that we need to continue to give to someone else or share with others.
Yeah, I love that you said not just personal development and self-care, because I feel like that's where your head goes to of like, oh, so I need to spend time discovering me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So good. Okay. So we have understand the price of that thing, value check. What's the third one?
The third one is time checks. Am I spending the right amount of time on the right things? Right. As we continue to build the muscle of execution in the thing that we're doing in our podcast and our businesses, then we technically should be doing more of that thing at a higher rate
Mhm.
and not spending as much time on it. So checking in with yourself, when am I most productive? How can I create more space for myself so that I am focusing on the priority things, the things that are really going to drive my podcast, and spending less time on the others, right? We really need to evaluate what the priority is and get in a better habit of not procrastinating or putting those things off.
Mm.
At times, it's really helpful to understand that the root of procrastination and why that is even showing up in us. If we find out that, oh, I'm waiting to the last minute to accomplish this thing or to finish this task or to do marketing because it may not be my favorite thing.
Mhm.
So knowing that there is secondary gain or there is a reward, we are as humans, we are always moving toward or away from pain and reward, right?
Mhm.
So the pain of sitting down and doing something that you don't like actually is giving you the reward of avoidance.
Mm.
That is a benefit to us procrastinating and putting things off because we don't address the fact that this thing may be a little scary for me and it is hard, but nothing becomes easy that wasn't once hard.
Mm. Ooh.
So
Yes.
remembering and telling yourself, hey, yes, that's why we got to reflect. "Ugh, I'm procrastinating. Don't put that that identification of how you're spending your time in the space of guilt, put it in the place of grace. So, okay, yes, I'm taking a lot of time to do this thing. Then ask why. I notice that I'm procrastinating. Oh, remember, nothing that is easy now was once always easy, right? It was hard, and it's hard for a reason because you're growing, you're building that muscle. So when you have those reminders and you know that there's always a reward that you're secretly getting from avoidance or procrastinating or spending a lot of time doing a certain task, then we can get even better at prioritizing and having that balance of momentum.
Wow. I'm thinking about there are I know some podcasters, and I have done this too, where you get into this, I would say, spiral almost, where we are we are just in that procrastination spiral, and then there's the guilt, and then there's the, well, now I don't really want to press record because now I've been avoiding this for so long, and I shouldn't even be or a podcaster, and like it's such a like quick spiral that we go out of. So, what would you say to somebody who maybe they're in that? They haven't recorded for, I don't know, months, and they are stuck in this cycle of guilt and then procrastination and then just kind of that hopeless spiral going on.
Yeah, I would tell them to check your speed, check your weight, and to check your direction,
Mm,
right? If you are noticing that you're not hitting the mark that you want, if you're not reaching the audiences that you want, there's going to be a connection to one of these lanes. Man, I have no speed right now. I'm not working hard in the areas that I want to be working. I don't have that self-discipline that I need to. So then if you notice that, check your weight, right? Who's in your corner that is holding you accountable?
mhm.
What skills do you need to develop? What other podcasters do you need to begin networking with? What do you need to re-understand about yourself? What value do you need to understand that you have? Check in with that. If you're in a procrastination spiral because it's taking you a really long time to get something done, but you have the speed, you're all in when you do that, check check your weight, right?
Yeah.
Do you have the right skills? Are you new at this? And do you need to accept that, yes, you will get better? But yeah, right now it's going to take you a little bit of time because you're gaining that new muscle. Continue to develop your wisdom in the arena that you want to speak into, right? It does take time. It does. So understand that it does take time. If you are also procrastinating and you know that you've got a little speed, it may be taking some time. Eh, you have the community, but your direction may be wrong. Is this really what you need to be speaking about, or do you need to do a direction set with yourself? Do you need to really set a more audacious goal or a more reasonable goal? Are you creating a goal for yourself that you can't truly have impact and influence on? Is this a goal that is not in your circle of control? Reaching a certain amount of audience members, yes, you can do that. But what other micro goals might you need to set first before you obtain that goal?
Mm. So good. Can you guys tell she's a cognitive coach? It's like, oh man, I feel like we're having a session right now. She's talking to us all. So this is so valuable. And I think this is so perfect for, as we head into December, we're thinking of the new year. We should be doing all of these things and having that grace with ourselves to really weigh in and ask ourselves all of those questions that you just mentioned. And it's just so impactful as a podcaster who helps other podcasters plan. This right here is so fundamental to setting yourself up well for success as a podcaster. So thank you so much. And I gotta ask, if people are like, okay, this wealth of wisdom I want to know more, Danielle. Where do I find you?
You can find me at fruitfulmind.com. So fruitful with two L's. We're full of fruit. And you can schedule some time to consult with me and to just really make sure that you are sustaining and building the business and life that you are supposed to have, that God has given you dominion to have. So that's what I do. I help purpose-driven women develop tools to sustain and build a fruitful business in life. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, you guys go check her out. I know I will be her next follower. And yes, I just appreciate you being here. And I know that our podcasters are going to benefit from this conversation today. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving me the time and space. It's been such a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Holistic Podcasting. Hey, if you enjoyed the show, leave a review and tell me why you loved this particular episode. I would love to hear from you, friend. And as always, happy podcasting.